Good. Just want to take a minute to start. The Combine's obviously a very big event for us from the scouting community, and I think Jeff Foster and his staff do an outstanding job with just organizing this huge event that's really, I think this is my 20th Combine, and from the year 2000 to now, it's grown just unbelievably. So, credit to him and his staff to kind of keep everything moving really smoothly over the course of the 5 or 6 days that we're here. So I think he deserves a lot of credit, and it's a great event. It's a good time for all of us to kind of get to know these players from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a personality standpoint. Kind of started that process, at the All-Star games, but this is a really one-stop shopping with everybody here. So that's what I got.
You mentioned the mental and personality. So how important are those?
Huge, yeah. We're trying to get guys that are versatile players that are going to have to learn more than one position. So, it really starts in the fall when our scouts go out to the schools. They talk to their coaches, they talk to the support staff, they try to gather as much information as possible. Really, then we get into this time of year when I can talk to them, coaches can talk to the players. We really delve into the questions that the scouts still have because the scouts are really the first wave, and then we come in January, February, March into April, and we kind of clean up some of the questions that they might still have outstanding because college football is it's a different game, and college football has the 20-hour rule, so there's only a certain amount that each player can kind of gather in terms of mental evaluation, in terms of scheme. So I think the NFL game has a lot more of that. So it's good for us to kind of get here and kind of put them through some of the questions that they're going to get at our level.
When it comes to using free agency to help build your roster, what's more important, adding a stud-type player, one of those blue-chip talents, or a number of guys that may fit the same structure?
Yeah, that's something that we talk about really throughout the year. Kind of once the season kind of gets midway point, you start looking at your needs for next year, so I can concentrate my efforts on watching the guys that are going to be available, whether it's college or pro. So I think it's a really, you got to blend it, just like we talk about, draft and free agency, draft best player available or need, right? So, sign 7 guys at X amount of dollars or sign 3 guys for, that. It's a question that comes up every year, but it really comes down to what guys are available to you, what guys you think as a system fit, and what guys do you might have some personal experience with that you feel better about giving a big contract to. So that's something that we talk about internally, with myself, with the coaches, with our cap guy. So it's an ongoing conversation. That's really, there's not one right answer to it.
Along those lines, you said you want to add playmakers this offseason.
Sure.
A certain amount of that have to go through free agency guys who have proven they can do it in this league, or how confident can you be in like a rookie at the number 8 overall pick or draft who can come right in?
No, absolutely. I think the NFL resume is huge. I mean, those guys have been in the league, most of them 4 years plus, right? Because they're hitting unrestricted free agency. So there's plenty of tape and stuff you can watch against NFL competition if they're making plays at whatever position they are. That's a little bit, I'd say, a safer bet than drafting anybody from the first round down to the 7th because the draft it's sporadic, and sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss. You try to do as much work as possible to kind of mitigate those misses, but yeah, the NFL in the free agency is more of a safe bet.
What's your philosophy generally taking a top 10 for specific roles?
Yeah, I think we take every pick seriously, and if there's a player that's worthy of the 8th overall pick and he happens to be a tight end, then I'm not against that. So it's kind of a little bit early in the process to say who that player may or may not be, but I don't have any guidelines that I've ever developed over my years in scouting that say you can't take a player at this position at that number. Like, I don't think that way. Everything's an individual kind of basis, individual scenario each year, depending on where you're drafting and what your needs are. Yeah.
What do you remember about him?
Yeah. No, B-Flow is great. Good friend of mine. I remember B-Flow coming in and being really quiet the first, I'd say, 6 months, which is usually when you're working New England, that's a good thing. And he just kind of put his head down and worked. And he started the same way I started. We as scouting assistants, you pick guys up at the airport, bring them for their physical, and you drive them around. So he probably logged as many hours in those vans as I did back in the day. So I'm really happy for Brian. I think he'll do a great job down there, and really happy for him and his family.
Just one thing about the tight end, this is long for the offseason, there's a lot of stuff goes in there. People react at all for them reaction, maybe go for the tight end, just good, bad, and different.
Yeah, I mean, in all due respect to our fans, and I have a great respect for them, I can't really listen to all that stuff. If I listened to everything that's out there, I'd be driving myself crazy. Yeah.
You mentioned New England. Brian's now in Miami.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have Natty in Detroit.
Yeah.
Graves and John Robinson in Tennessee. Do you have to take that into account that there are other organizations that have a similar philosophy when you're trying to plan which players you like? Because they might like the same players.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we kind of talk about, really, but we really can't control what they're evaluating and like what they think. And I think our system, for Tennessee, for example, I've watched a lot of them over the course of the last year or so, and even when Mike was in Houston, their defense is actually a lot different than ours. People might kind of put the dots together that it might be similar, but there's a lot of differences that Coach Pease in Tennessee is doing differently than Coach Pasqualoni is doing in Detroit. So the style players maybe, but specifically, I think there's a lot of differences. Yeah, I think, going back to the Glover thing, I did read what he said, and, all those conversations I have with players during the offseason, during the in-season about, like, their futures are private between me and that player. But I'll say this, Glover, came in last year. He wasn't in the offseason program, came in mini camp in June, was in good shape, came in, had a good training camp. I have nothing but good things to say about Glover in terms of what he brought on the field, off the field. I really, had a really good conversation with Glover, whatever it was, 10 days ago. Matt and I gave him a call and, had a good conversation about a lot of things. And, he'll land on his feet if he wants to play again. And he really, for a veteran player, he's been in the league a while. And when I came here 3+ years ago, he's one of the guys I leaned on. Like, I was new on the job. He'd been in the league a long time. And I have a great deal of respect for Glover and, really feel like I have a friendship with him and a relationship with him, and that'll probably last forever.
Your comments about not ruling out quarterback at number 8 for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you even consider quarterback at 8 if you have Stafford locked up for 4 more years? You guys are why would you?
Yeah, it's similar to the question I got before. I'm never going to say yes or no to one position at a specific time. If I have somebody graded that high, like, I'm never going to say that I can't take whatever position it is, running back, receiver, quarterback, at whatever number it is. If I do that, then I'm eliminating guys off the board. And, part of what we do is, like I've talked about since I've been here, is try to blend best available and need. So, and sometimes it's a combination of both. So.
It's not different when you draft one quarterback, though.
Yeah, no, nope.
Bob, I know it's early in the process, but are there any positions that maybe start to jump off of these some of your goals as well, where you're
Yeah, this is a really well-rounded draft. I would say, I think there was 45 or 50 additional juniors. Don't quote me on that number, but there was a large number more juniors that declared for the draft than even last year. So I'd say the middle rounds and kind of the core of the draft has a lot of more depth than I'd say in the last year or two. So, those positions is the offensive line has good depth. I think receiver core has good depth. Tight ends, obviously, a lot of those are underclassmen. I think there's probably 7 or 8 underclassmen that are projected to go pretty high. So yeah, there's some guys there's some positions that match up to need, but I think we're still, we're in February here. I think this is a big week to kind of see where everyone kind of ends up ranking, and then we get to the pro days and then our visits and stuff. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think some of the stuff matches up. So one more time.
One more on the tight end.
Yeah.
We so rarely see that in the top 10, top half of the first round. It's obviously a very important position in the NFL.
Sure.
Successful, but why are teams reluctant to draft it that high? Is it because it's a different position? Evaluate it. Why don't teams draft tight ends?
I really don't know. It's a position that I'll say this, in college football, a lot of the times the tight ends are flexed out in the slot. There's only certain amount of offenses in college football that I would say are pro style. Most of them are spread 4 wide or 3 wide with a tight end displaced. So, you get into evaluating guys, you're like, wow, he's a good receiving tight end, right? But can he block? And you go through all his film and you're like, well, there's only 60 plays of him with his hand in the three-point stance blocking a defensive end. So the sample size of watching collegiate tight ends block is really, depending, except for a couple of schools, there's not much there. So maybe that's part of it. That's something that we obviously, spend a lot of time at because, the tight end position is versatile. You're going to have to go run route. You're going to run routes, pass protect, which is crucial, right? Because sometimes you're going to have the running back, out in the route, and you're going to have to leave the tight end in the block. And then you're going to have to block in the run game. We made a commitment to the run game last year with Carry On, and, I think the tight end position kind of marries up with that to be able to secure the edge of the defense and, get some of our, skill players, Carry On, Theo, and those guys out to the edge. So. Yeah, TJ, everyone's kind of different in terms of the evaluation process on each player. Some players, you can really have that evaluation done in a couple weeks after the season. Some guys linger a little bit longer, and I'd say, TJ's in that category of someone that we're still kind of going through the process, thinking about what we want to do and kind of talking to TJ a little bit here and there. But those conversations between, myself and him will kind of keep private. One more time? Yeah. Yeah, I never use the word bell cow. I think the way the NFL is set up nowadays, you got to have multiple backs. There's really one or two guys in the league you're going to turn around and hand the ball off to 30-plus times. And I think, it's a long season, it's a long training camp. So to keep everybody healthy and fresh through the, second half of the season, it's not good to kind of have one main guy. So I think we always want to have a complement to that, whether that's, a passing game guy like Theo Riddick, or, later in the season, Zach Zinner came in and had a good, second half of the season for us. So that's not a word I use, but I always think that the more depth you have at the running back position, the better chance you're going to be able to run the ball later in the season. So. Yeah, I'm not going to put a number on how many touches he's going to have. I'm really, some of the fantasy football fans out there might want to know that. Once we get our offense kind of installed with our new coordinator, those carries will be kind of divvied up based on what helps us going to win each game. Some teams we're going to go out and try to run the ball 30, 40 times because we think that's a good matchup for us. There's other games we're going to spread it out and try to throw it. So that's going to be up to the coaches and, Coach Bevel and Coach Patricia to do that. And I'm just kind of try to get as many pieces in place so the offense has multiplicity to it. So. Yeah, I mean, TJ obviously went through some injury stuff this year, so that's part of the process with every player.
Back to the needs, do you have any philosophy one way or the other about sort of doubling or tripling up at a position if you have, seeking edges and you take 3 guys there, or is that a bad allocation of resources?
In the draft? 3? 3 would be a little bit of a stretch. 2, I think 2 wouldn't be out of the question. This year, obviously, we have 9 picks, so that's something that, if you go into the draft with 6 picks, it's kind of hard to kind of double up on one position, really depending on what your roster looks like. I'll never say never. I think there's, we talked about some of the positions of need and some of the positions of depth so far in this early process of the draft. And if they match up and there's some, quality depth, if you take somebody early and there's a middle round guy that you have kind of graded a little higher, then I'll always consider that. Kind of still in the evaluation process with Ziggy. Ziggy obviously had a little bit more of a serious injury towards mid-season, so that's probably more of a medical conversation than anything else right now. I don't really have those answers. So. Yeah. Yeah, no, Tease is a corner. Tease, obviously actually came in the last couple weeks of the season. We kind of saw a little bit of an uptick with Tease. Kind of played with a little bit more confidence, played in the slot, played at nickel against Green Bay and did a good job against some of those guys. So, listen, I still have faith in him. He obviously hasn't played as much as I would have hoped, but I think, we're not giving up on him. He actually had a conversation with him a couple days ago. So, he's a guy that we're, counting on to get better. Some guys, Tease was pretty young when we drafted him. So, some guys take a huge step between year 1 and year 2. I'm hoping that Tease takes a big step from year 2 to year 3. So. Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, thanks, guys.